try to get your heads around what the technology is, and what blockchain exists, and what it is, and how it could generate potential careers for you guys, and open up opportunities for you that you might not otherwise be aware of. So today, just a little bit about me. As Nick said, my name is Constantine Caritas. I'm a partner at a very good law firm called Reed Smith. It's about 2,000 lawyers. Within the firm, I run a couple of different practice groups. Those relevant to today's discussion are, number one, our crypto and digital assets group, which we call Reed Smith On Chain. About 150 lawyers around the world in places like Singapore, Dubai, London, and throughout the U.S. who do nothing else but represent interests in crypto. And what are those interests? We represent some big names that you guys are aware of, like MicroStrategy, for instance, Coinbase, which you're all familiar with. We do a bunch of work for Ripple, which of course is the company that issues the XRP token, which some of you hold, as you mentioned. The CEO of Ripple is a good friend. His name is Greg Garlinghouse. He lives in Miami Beach, and he's made billions through the issuance of XRP. Up until recently, I didn't know what Ripple did, and I would joke around with them. I said it's basically just issuing tokens. But more recently, they've developed a tremendous business in the payment processing space. So probably you guys aren't sending wires at your age, but the adults in the room have sent wires, and it will take a day, sometimes it will take longer, you've got to go through all these checks. So if you issue a payment on XRP, it's seconds. And so that's kind of what the technology is kind of working towards in terms of how we change. Banks haven't gotten on board to the extent that they will, so there's still a lot of legacy ways that people transact business that are changing. So we represent those types of entities. We also represent investors in the space. We represent folks who are issuing new tokens or meme coins, which we'll talk about. We represent several of President Trump's interests. We represent World Liberty Financial, which is a big outfit that issued some stable coins recently, which we'll talk about. We represent American Bitcoin, which is a new company that wants to be like MicroStrategy. It's listed on the public exchange. Eric Trump is a big part of that. And we're about to launch a big public company that will own and trade the Trump meme coin. So when we get to meme coins, you'll kind of understand. Hopefully you can understand what they are. It's really just a momentum game. There's really no inherent value. So if you believe in the brand, you'll buy it, but it's not really something that is working towards it in the future. So let's jump in if we can. And by the way, I'm here to help you guys understand this space. My sense is you guys probably know more than I may think. How I got into crypto was my nephew, Ambrose, Cash's cousin, who told me about something called Bitcoin about 8 years ago. And I said, well, what is that? And he was 15 at the time. Probably you guys are the same age. And I looked into it. I bought some. I've held it, which turned out to be a pretty smart decision. But when I did, it kind of opened my eyes to what is really going out there in the crypto world and the digital asset world. And so, with that in mind, just raise your hand and ask a question. Even if it's not necessarily on the slide that I'm talking about, the more you guys interact, the more I can kind of help you where you're at. So, any questions before I kind of jump into the presentation? Okay, let's go. Okay, I kind of went over this already. This is kind of like what we're going to get into today. What you guys should be aware of, basically, is that digital assets are now probably the fastest growing industry in the world. You have AI for sure, but there are literally hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars that people hold in crypto. It is one of the most important infrastructures out there. If there's ever a systemic problem with Bitcoin, for instance, it's gonna ripple through our economy. More and more people own that every day, hundreds of millions of people around the world. Banks have now issued what we call exchange-traded exchanges, where people can buy shares of Bitcoin or shares of Ethereum or shares of Solana, and they're publicly listed. So BlackRock, for instance, Fidelity, all of these major financial institutions now have offerings which are being sold to their retail customers, which is really all of us or your parents, so that they can get more exposure. So the more money that goes in, the prices go up, and that's why you see all this appreciation in the price of crypto. If you follow it on a day-to-day basis, the last few weeks have been really rough in the crypto space. Danny's laughing, just don't sell. And there's been a big drop in the price. So crypto is very volatile. It's a risky investment in the short term. In the longer term, it's proven to be, at least for Bitcoin, a better investment than the S&P 500. Do you guys know what that is? That's a collection of the top 500 companies. Bitcoin's outperformed the S&P 500 by quite a bit over the past, well, 15 years, 10, 15 years. So I want you to think about just how significant this industry is and where it goes. And when you marry the blockchain and crypto with AI, we're going to have a future of where all of the transactions that you're doing right now, where you have to go to a bank or you have to call a broker for buying a real estate property, or if you go to an insurance agent to settle claims, all that's going to be settled instantaneously on your, probably on your phone, on X, or on a Google function or something like that. And so, you know, my advice to my son's daughter, or that they need to really be thinking about these industries, is where they want to focus their energies in terms of their careers. I'm not saying to the exclusion of all else, but if you're looking 5, 10 years in the future where the best career opportunity is going to be, I would think they're going to be around these industries. So as you guys think about plotting your course over the next 10 years, I'd keep an open mind to these places. So here's kind of how people have thought about this up until recently. And it's not even 3 years where what I'll call mainstream or traditional organizations have really kind of embraced the industry. You all know who Warren Buffett is, right?
Yeah.
He has consistently said that crypto is a farce, it's a fraud, he doesn't touch it. And in this one instance, I think he's wrong. He's proven to be wrong. Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan, for years poo-pooed the industry, and only about a year ago did he come out and say he was wrong. There are literally trillions of dollars being transacted on the blockchain. For someone to say that it's not a real thing, it's kind of hard. It's not a traditional thing, sure, but it's definitely a real thing. And so BlackRock, you guys know BlackRock is probably the largest asset manager in the world, manages trillions of dollars. It's moved hard into crypto. The CEO is a guy named Larry Fink, who's among the smartest people in the financial industry, where he's made a huge bet on crypto. It's worked out largely so far. Fidelity is a huge retirement asset management plan. Probably some people have money at Fidelity. They've moved very significantly into crypto and into Bitcoin. So I'm telling you all this just so that you have this kind of frame of reference of how important and systemic this industry has become, and how it's going to affect really all of your daily activities, certainly in the commercial space. Okay, so what are digital assets? At its basic form, digital assets are digital representations of value verified by cryptography recorded on blockchains. It can be owned, transferred, and traded without traditional intermediaries. That means everything's done on the computer into other computer programs, and they're all settled there. The categories of digital assets, the cryptocurrencies, which we just talked about, which is Bitcoin, which is really store of value. Bitcoin itself isn't a blockchain. It is a blockchain, but it isn't something you build on. It's not something you do payment processing on. It's really a store of value, much like gold. And so if you learn about economics, and I'm not sure where you guys are at in that kind of a venue, gold has been the standard value preservation asset. The more gold you had, the more wealth you were supposed to have had. That's changed. I mean, gold is ripping right now. If you're paying attention, gold has never been higher. But Bitcoin is now serving as an alternative asset class or measurements. People are accumulating Bitcoin not to sell it, but to have it as a store of wealth and something that they believe long-term will increase in value. If you're asking me what the price of Bitcoin is going to be in 3 or 5 years, I don't know, but I can tell you what really smart people have told me about it that I think will be interesting for you guys to know. If even 5 years ago, I would have told you Bitcoin would be $120,000, you guys would have laughed. Bitcoin was probably 3,000 back then, 3 to 5,000, and when it first came out, it was about 300.
Please pardon interruption. Dylan Vertesh, please report to your car at this time.
So to think about where it could go from here, and the numbers I give you, they're going to seem really large, but in fact, if you think about where it's come from to where it's going, it's not even anywhere remotely exponentially going to be bigger than it already has been. So some of the folks, like Mike Novogratz, he's the CEO of Galaxy, he's one of the first believers in crypto. He was recently interviewed around his belief on crypto. He believes that within 3 years, crypto will be $500,000 per Bitcoin, and that in 5 years, 7 years max, Bitcoin will be trading close to $1 million Bitcoin. So take it for what it's worth. It sounds like a lot. If you have a few Bitcoin, you'll be very happy. And part of the reason is people are stressed about the value of traditional currencies. So Bitcoin in some countries is actually used like you would use a dollar here. Because in those countries, because of inflation and other monetary policies, the value of those currencies is plummeted to the point where they're worthless. So think about a place like Argentina that struggled for many years. Bitcoin is used quite often as in place of the peso there. Think about places like Turkey, for instance, where they've had massive 300+% inflation every year. Bitcoin is used as currency. Here in the U.S., it's not really a thing in terms of using it as currency, especially because of the tax implications of doing so. But Bitcoin here is used as a measure of value. And so you see people, you hear about these whales in crypto who own thousands of crypto. Very rarely do they ever sell their crypto because they do believe that Bitcoin in the long run is going to have the appreciation I just mentioned. Now Ethereum is a little different. Ethereum is called a layer 1. It's a blockchain. A blockchain is basically an amalgamation of computer programs on which you can do transactions like those that I mentioned. Ethereum was the first, it's probably the best, and as a result, the tokens that are issued that represent the value of Ethereum have appreciated in price quite a bit. Ethereum is about, I don't know, I think it's 3,500 today. I don't know if anyone's checked. 3,100. It kind of reached almost 5,000, I think, in this last cycle. Ethereum was like $100 just a few years ago, so the appreciation has been massive. Ethereum is by far the most used blockchain. When I say most used, it's where other applications have built on it. So layer 1 is a set of computer programs. There are several layer 1 blockchains. We've mentioned a couple. Solana is the layer 1 blockchain. Ethereum is a layer 1 blockchain. Cardano is a layer 1 blockchain. It's basically a building block that has the opportunity for you, if you're like a game, you guys, well, I assume you don't, Cash Mike. There are gambling apps like Better and Hard Rock and other places where you make profits. Those transactions get settled almost instantaneously. They're all built upon these layer 1s. So that's just an easier example to say. But there are other apps that are the same thing. They just kind of they glom on or they log into these layer 1s, and all the transactions are done through the app off of the layer 1. And the layer 1, Ethereum, Solana, generate revenue every time that happens. That's how they make it. And then you have stable coins. Does anyone know what a stable coin is? Go ahead.
Like USDC?
Yeah, that's one stable coin.
Based on the US dollar.
You're right. So he said, and he's right, that a stable coin is a digital representation of a fiat currency. Fiat basically means government. And so in order to be able to transact very quickly, especially in foreign countries, not so much here, people buy stable coins. And they're basically just a representation of the dollar. One stable coin is $1. And then you use it in that way. Why not just use dollars? Because of the time delay and disruption and inability to be able to access real dollars for people outside the country. So if I'm in China and I want to use stable coins to buy something, I can easily buy stable coins online instantaneously who I'm buying it from are the stablecoin issuers. You may have heard of a few. Tether's a huge one. Circle's another one. And so they have actually accumulated, they're supposed to legally, the equivalent of the amount of stable coins they issue, they're supposed to be holding in cash. Because if not, and something happened, you have a massive problem. And so the stable coins are then you're able to then transact online, off the blockchain, much quicker than you would if you have dollars. And in foreign countries, that's a big deal, because there's no way they can trade in dollars, other than through the use of stable coins. 90% of stable coins usage is outside the US. Here we don't need it, we can access dollars, it's not a problem. So, the other thing about stable coins you should know is more transactions have been processed using stable coins than Visa and MasterCard and Discover globally. It's a massive industry. But we're not as familiar with it because we're not really using stable coins here in the US. We might be investing in those companies that are issuing those stable coins and making a great return. Circle did an IPO this year, which was a massive home run for its investors. So that's stable coins. So the other digital assets that you guys are definitely familiar with are NFTs, which was a really hot thing for a while. And NFTs is basically just a digital image of a piece of art, a baseball card, a car. And for a while, you guys know what pudgy penguins are? Have you seen that digital asset, anyone?
Yeah.
You have, right? That's still very hot, NFTs. And it's basically just a computer image you own and collect. And the more demand for it, or the more rare it's perceived, or if it's got some artistic value, which I have no ability to assess, that's how those prices appreciate. NFTs are coming back somewhat, but it got crazy about 3 or 4 years ago when you'd have basically just a computer image selling for millions and millions of dollars. The other one is the Bored Apes, which you guys have seen probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another NFT that still has legs. And that's another digital asset. One of the more recent forms of digital assets are something called real world, tokenizing real world assets. And my firm and myself are working on some really big projects around tokenizing oil. So what does that mean, tokenizing oil? That means you issue through tokens an ownership interest in a commodity, in a piece of real estate, in a way that you wouldn't otherwise have access to. It kind of democratizes investments, which I think is one of the positive legacies of crypto and digital assets. It opens up a lot more investment opportunities to people who might not otherwise have access to it, because you can buy $1 of a barrel of oil as opposed to having to buy the whole commodity, and you can access it much more easily. We're working on a real estate project right now for the Trump Organization, where they're going to they're going to allow people to invest in the equity of that real estate project in denominations as low as $10, and the only way to do that is by tokenizing. So they'll get a representative interest in that property. There's no other real way you could do that if you think about it, because in order to invest in a property like that, you'd have to be the promoter or the developer or the lender, and you'd be writing big checks, and there's no other way to get into it. So that's a more recent phenomenon in digital assets, and that's tokenizing your interest in those things. Yes?
Is there legislation that's allowing for tokenization of real estate in the United States right now?
It is a developing area. The body of law that governs tokenization of real world assets is tied into securities laws. And so there's a real rigorous regime that governs securities that are intended to protect retail investors like those that I'm mentioning, that you have to navigate when you're doing this. Sometimes you have to set them up offshore, not to avoid US law, but to kind of focus only on offshore investors in terms of this tokenization. Because, and I don't want to go deep into this because it's a pretty complicated area, but when you deal with something called securities, whether it's equities on the stock market or commodities or things like that, you have to do it in a very careful way or you risk violating federal laws. And so when you issue tokens represented, that are representing interests in real estate, there's an argument that those are securities and are subject to the same body of law. However, there's a developing consensus that they're not securities. And there's a developing effort in DC right now to enact legislation that will protect them from being deemed securities. There's actually been several laws passed this year which support the crypto industry, which has been a welcome relief. For many years, the SEC was led by a guy, Gary Gensler, who was really, really against crypto, and he was coming after anyone in the space very aggressively. So much so that a lot of the innovation and new jobs that were being developed in crypto moved offshore. They've since been repatriated with a more relaxed regulatory environment in the past year or so. Okay, I mentioned this a little bit. So what is a blockchain? I want you guys to read that a little bit so you can understand why its role in our day-to-day business and commercial activities is going to be bigger and bigger every day. Everything that we do now that takes 3 or 4 steps to accomplish on a financial transaction can be done immediately and safer because of the way the blockchain works. There's less risk of fraud, there's less risk of manipulation, there's less risk the money went the wrong way because of the way the algorithms of these blockchains work. The adoption of blockchain is happening, as I mentioned, slowly, and will continue to change the way we do things. So just picture, we've all been through, getting a mortgage for real estate property. How many documents are you signing and closing? It's insane, right? 20, 30, 40 documents. You have a title company, you have lawyers in every direction, you have to follow these federal forms. It's a very cumbersome and lengthy process. There are now mortgage transactions that are happening like that, just inserting data. There will be a lot of people displaced from that cycle. I think title companies in particular are probably going to have some issues coming up, as a lot of the work they do is much easier handled electronically. So that's what the blockchain is. It's just really the next generation technological enhancement of the way we do businesses. So if you think about AI stepping in and taking on certain thought processes or research processes, I'm sure you're not allowed to use ChatGPT here at Columbus, but I'm sure you all have played around with ChatGPT and you've seen what it can do in terms of providing you answers and information around things that might have taken a long time for you guys to get to the same place. So the blockchain is the same thing, only in respect of the way commercial activity happens. Yes?
But what do you think is in the way of businesses moving their entire business to the blockchain? Like, what's holding back financial institutions from moving to it? If it's more efficient.
I think a few things. Number one, when you're I don't say this wrong, when you're a dinosaur, you don't necessarily want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
And so your way of generating revenue is threatened. And so your business model is now questioned. There's so much, so many people, so many accounts, so much infrastructure in place that it's hard to kind of just move it overnight. It'll happen gradually. I think it'll end up creating more jobs, not less jobs, because of the amount, a lot more activity it'll have.
What about, like, you were talking about a mortgage and we sign all these papers? Is it safe? Like, is there a vault? Is there a way to safeguard people's identity, titles, things like that?
Yeah, in fact, it's supposed, in fact, there's an argument that it's a lot more safe. It's a lot safer than the way we do things because of the removal of multiple layers of human involvement. So takes out a lot of opportunity for human error and the like with that. And it's quicker, right, and more efficient, so that's really the enthusiasm around it. And I mentioned this a little while ago. I've dealt with, the issue of sending a wire and taking several days. I'm sure you all have, certainly internationally. Now it's done in seconds. And you've used it and you don't even know. Venmo is basically a blockchain technology. That you can send that kind of money instantaneously to someone who's provided services for home or, paying for parking or whatever. That's a blockchain technology. How would you have done that years ago? If you think about it. You'd have to write a check, that check would have to have been deposited, that deposit would take 3 or 4 days to ensure that you had the money that was backed up by that check. Now it's literally 30 seconds, right? You send Venmo. And the Venmo, is tied to the bank, so the banks are not necessarily out, they're just having to adopt. So Bitcoin we mentioned is basically digital gold. It's another store of value. I kind of went through how it's looked at, but here's some more facts around Bitcoin that are pretty exciting. I mean, it's kind of incredible if you think about the origins of Bitcoin and how it's become. No one really knows who invented Bitcoin. There is a gentleman named Paul Satoshi Nakamoto, who is thought to have developed the Bitcoin protocol. It's basically a computer program that has proven to be incredibly resilient and is fixed in terms of its length and how much Bitcoin it will be issued. You can see here, the number of Bitcoin will be 21 million coins max. Don't know where we are in that total amount, but you guys may be familiar with the phrase Bitcoin mining, which is basically people who are trying to generate Bitcoin. And to show you how naive I was when I first learned about Bitcoin, someone said, oh, you should invest in a Bitcoin miner. And I'm like, okay, well, who is that? Who does this? I was thinking about some of the hard hat, and they had a shovel, and they were going to dig for Bitcoin, and they're like, you have to buy these certain types of computers. That's all it is. Plug them in. They suck up a lot of energy. Controversy. So Bitcoin mining is basically just getting the fastest powered computers that understand the algorithm to generate, hashtags of Bitcoin. So 0.001, and over time they accumulate some. Yes.
How is Bitcoin exactly generated? What is a Bitcoin exactly, and how is it generated?
Bitcoin is a computer program
Okay.
in its basic sense, and they're generated or discovered through computers, special types of computers that are mining. But what they're doing is they're generating digits, which would be the equivalent of gold nuggets. And as they hit those digits, they start to generate numbers that equal a percentage of Bitcoin. And over time, you can accumulate quite a bit. It's a very expensive undertaking, and so Bitcoin miners have not been particularly successful because it takes a lot of money to buy those computers. It takes a lot of money to power those computers. And if Bitcoin's not at a certain price, you end up maybe spending more on Bitcoin you mine than Bitcoin's worth.
And Bitcoin is similar to gold in the sense that it's supposed to have a set value. Like this is your hedge against economic uncertainty.
Yeah.
In a sense.
In a way, you're right, yeah. So like gold is as well. I mean, the prices fluctuate on the open market.
Right.
Bitcoin was 123, I think it is. I don't know. And now it's, what, 85?
Broke 90 today, 91.
Yeah. And that's just based on the demand and supply of Bitcoin. Again, I think if you're interested in investing in this space, holding these assets, unless you're a day trader, and I don't think you guys are, you may be one day, but you're not able to trade in and out of these things every day and generate a little bit of profit. Then, especially given how young you are, buy it and hold it. 20 years from now, you're gonna be like, cow. Have quite a bit of money from this, So I'm sure your folks are doing, some of your folks anyway. Holding, there's a motto that maximalist Bitcoiners wear. It's HODL. Have you seen this motto? It's hold on for dear life. That's their approach. markets and the reporting from the financial markets, it's right up there as one of the asset classes, which is kind of interesting and kind of fascinating, if you ask me. So somebody mentioned they own shares of MicroStrategy. I do too. This guy Michael Saylor is a character for sure. I've met him a bunch of times and we've seen him. He has accumulated the largest collection of Bitcoin. He continues to do so. The price of his company, MicroStrategy, fluctuates like crazy. Gives me some stress, but I have a long-term view of it. Basically, what he does is initially what he did, it's called a digital asset treasury play. So he has a company. MicroStrategy was initially a healthcare company or a biotech company that generated revenue. He would take that revenue and he'd acquire Bitcoin, and then he could just keep doing it with the revenue that was generated by the underlying company, to the point where Bitcoin became the company, and now is solely what that company does. There have been dozens, if not hundreds, of other copycats who've gone out there to try to do that. We represent a bunch, and all they're doing is trying to accumulate Bitcoin through the public markets, either through raising money from investors or by generating revenue through the businesses that they've acquired from capital markets. And so that's basically what Michael Saylor did. He is definitely a trip. So Ethereum, I mentioned already, is the number one layer one. I'm going to kind of explain to you what that is and what goes on Ethereum. And you'll notice things I mentioned that you can build on Ethereum. Actually, this is a good quote for how you should think of Ethereum. Think of Ethereum as a global computer that anyone can build financial applications on without asking the bank for permission.
Would you say that if institutions were gonna adopt the blockchain, they're gonna do it on Ethereum?
I would think so, yeah. I think Solana is more for meme coins, or more for gambling, or more for kind of riskier type things, but more traditional and conservative financial applications will almost invariably be built on Ethereum.
Which inherently should raise the price.
Yeah, over the long term, I think. Look, I have a lot of friends who are Ethereum maximalists, and I hate that word, but they basically believe that Ethereum is going to be the most important computer program in the world because of what you get built on, and then nobody has developed anything that's as good. Like I said, I like Solana because there's so much other activity, but Ethereum I think is the standard. Okay, we went through stable coins, but I do want you guys to just kind of take this in a little bit. It's a little bit more detailed around it and why people are using stable coins. In the U.S., there was something called the Genius Act that was passed earlier this year that basically legalized stable coins at the federal level. There are a lot of states that have banned stable coins. The risk with stable coins, especially if they're not pegged to the dollar or another government currency, is that they'll dilute the value of the dollar. And U.S. strength, in large measure, develops from the strength of our economy, and in particular the use of the dollar as the standard form of currency around the world. And so if there's a threat to the dollar, you can bet that our politicians are going to get really nervous and look to kind of kill that threat. So that's something that will be interesting to see how that plays out over the coming years, especially as our debt increases as it has. Almost good, guys. I made this point earlier. Stable coins settle more value annually than Visa. That's a huge, huge number, by the way. Okay, meme coins. Meme coins is gambling. I'm just gonna call it what it is, but it's fun. You know, if you have a few dollars, you want to bet on a meme coin. You know, some of the meme coins you've seen have been Doge. Doesn't actually, you can't actually do anything with it. It's just basically betting on other people's interest in buying more Doge, and it's worked. I personally invested in Doge right before the election, thinking that if President Trump won, crypto would go up overall. And it was right. I immediately sold it. I made a few dollars, but it's a momentum play. It's betting on people's enthusiasm around name, value. When the Trump meme coin came out, people made a fortune. People just wanted to buy it and have it, because it's scarce and it's kind of like a collector's item, I guess, but it gets traded a lot, but it's a really risky type of investment. Are you guys familiar with meme coins? Do you ever say I want to buy some Doge or Shibu or Melania or, you know, other meme coins? Yes?
I bought Pepe at startup and sold around peak in November last year.
I didn't hear you. Could you?
I bought Pepe when it was a startup, and then I sold around the election time when it was peaking.
I think you probably did very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowing when to sell is people say it's art, I think it's probably largely luck, but being in early, so when these memes issue, if you somehow are in on that game, you're gonna make a lot of money. It's almost a rigged game a little bit, so I'd be careful, there's only so many people that get those initial tokens, but Pepe was a big one. Go ahead.
If you're new to the crypto space like I am, how do you invest in Bitcoin and Ethereum and all those more stable holdings
Yeah.
without breaking them? Are they publicly traded?
No, you can go to an exchange, a crypto exchange like Coinbase, that's probably the safest and well-known. And you can set up an account for $100 and buy very tiny pieces of Bitcoin or Ethereum. They probably have 50 to 100 different cryptocurrencies you can purchase. It's probably the easiest way to do it. There are other exchanges like Kraken or Uniswap that you could or Uphold you can go to and buy. But the one that's kind of has the longest tenure and is very regulated and I think the safest would be Coinbase. And so that's where you can go. You'll need your parents to open that account for you, though, I'm pretty sure. It's probably a good idea. So that's what meme coins are. All right, that kind of brings me almost exactly where I need to be. Do you guys have any questions? It's a really interesting and fun area for me. You know, I've been practicing law for quite some time, and so having a chance to build a practice around this space has been really rewarding and fun. It's also exposed me to a lot younger folks, which is always a great thing. Go ahead.
You say that digital currency is better in places like Argentina or outside of the U.S. So what would be the benefit of holding a digital currency like in the U.S.?
Well, so if you own stable coins, really you're the way the stable coin companies make money is that there's a very tiny fee that's charged every time stable coin's transacted, and it has to be small because otherwise doesn't make sense to use a stable coin. And so the reason to buy would be to buy into the companies that issue the stable coins, because as those stable coins become more widely used and spread around the world, their value is going to increase. So it's basically any other business. The more stable coins they sell, the more that company's worth. And so that's why you would buy a company that issues stable coins. Yes?
Do you think that buying stable coins and stuff like that would be a better alternative than to buying, say, property to build generational wealth?
So I'll give you my thoughts. I'm a lawyer, and one of the things you'll find is you have older lawyers are not good financial advisors. So I'll just give you my general thoughts. It's good to have a diverse portfolio. So, you know, I wouldn't have just crypto, I wouldn't have just real estate, I wouldn't have just stocks, I wouldn't have just bonds. I'd have a balanced portfolio, and depending on your risk tolerance, which when you're younger should be higher than what it is when you're older, I would think you would want to have crypto be a percentage of your overall holdings. So it wouldn't be either or, it would just be how much of each do you want to have in your portfolio. Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead in the back.
How damaging is Bitcoin for like the environment? Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency.
That's a great question. I think, you know, especially now with AI, which I think is actually drawing in much more energy and creating a lot of, you know, potentially harmful issues. It's a big drag on energy. When you mine Bitcoin, it pulls in a ton of energy, and I think it can create issues in local communities that have unfettered use of that energy. I think it's a little bit my own personal opinion, it's overstated how much it's adding to global environmental issues. I think that's been a kind of a red herring. It's been used to try to shut down the industry by folks who don't believe in it. But my personal sense is that it's an issue, but not nearly as big as some would make it out to be. Who else has a question? Yes?
As technology gets better and the mining machines get better, wouldn't it just deflate the price of Bitcoin?
Well, it's really a function of demand. And so Bitcoin miners weren't going to continue to mine Bitcoin if the cost to mine that Bitcoin is less than the amount that Bitcoin is selling for at the market. So a few years ago, when Bitcoin fell down to 11,000, for many miners, a lot of them went out of business, number one, but a lot of miners just stopped mining, and they turned to other uses of the energy that they were pulling to mint Bitcoin. So the market kind of has a way to kind of work that out, so that you're never going to get to a point where if you're pumping up way too much Bitcoin, the price can go down, and then you're going to stop mining. So it'll kind of regulate itself. Does that make sense? Yes.
Do you think, long term, trading like meme coins on Solana is more stable than trading like on S&P 500?
I didn't hear the last part of that.
Do you think it's more stable to trade like real like stocks than trading on like meme coins on
I
Solana?
think stocks are a much safer thing to be trading than meme coins, for sure. But again, if you're just allocating a small amount and you have a edge, you think that you've heard something, or you know somebody who's issuing, like you had some early interest in Pepe, yeah, then you can do that. But stocks are definitely a safer asset class than meme coins. I think most things are a safer class than you make a ton of money. There have been a couple of stocks that have played the way that a meme coin played. GameStop is one that just ran up for seemingly no reason and created a lot of wealthy people. A lot of people lost a lot of money. There's a movie on that. I don't know if you guys saw that. What happened there? Yes.
Do you think that in today's day and age, it's necessary for the youth and people, say my generation, to invest in cryptocurrency so that we could, have a better standing than, say, people who did 50, 80 years before?
I think if you're able to invest in cryptocurrencies now, at least for the big three, which I would say are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP, you're probably going to be happy in 10 years. But again, I think you've got to have an overall balanced portfolio. Not a financial planner, but that would be my thinking. That's kind of how I approached it.
Do you think it's necessary though?
Well, it's, a lot of folks, younger people, have a much higher allocation to crypto than I would think some of the older folks in this room, because they feel more comfortable and safer with it. I have one client who has 1/3 Bitcoin, 1/3 S&P 500, and 1/3 cash. So, I think he's done extraordinarily well. So, yes.
What would be the biggest legal issue or biggest legal catalyst that would hit the next crypto market run?
There's one pending right now. There's legislation in Congress that's kind of sitting at a committee level at the Senate that I think is going to get passed. And what that will do is issue new rules and regulations to govern crypto in a way that would, I think, unleash.
Is that a follow-up on the Genius Act?
It's a follow-on to the Genius Act. And it's important because right now, crypto and digital assets are governed by laws that were meant for crypto and digital assets. They were meant for security. They were passed in the 30s and 40s, basically. Of course, there was no sense of cryptocurrencies back then. So if that law passes, I think it would be like gasoline in the market.
How about Morgan Stanley's recent classification on the treasuries, crypto treasuries, kind of being forced into its own asset class as opposed to within being able to trade on.
Yeah.
What do you think about those?
I think it's going to happen, and I think they're right, and it should happen.
So guys like MicroStrategy, BMR should be traded in a different asset class?
Well, I mean, they're still issuing public equities, so I think they're talking more about how the assets they own controlled or regulated, as opposed to the way that they're owned, the way those companies are owned. I've closed like 12 digital asset treasury deals this year. One of the biggest ones, Nakamoto. I don't know if you know a guy named Anthony Compiano, who's a big name in Bitcoin. And those companies are struggling right now because crypto's gone down quite a bit, but I think in the long term, they'll be just fine. Who else has a question? Yes?
What exactly is XRP?
So XRP is a token that represents an interest, not an equity interest, but it's representative of the activities of Ripple, the company. And Ripple, the company, is a payment processing company, which has now added a few other lines of businesses. So XRP is basically a digital representation of Ripple, until Ripple goes public, and it will, maybe even next year. For me, Ripple, the only part of Ripple that is problematic, there's no limit on how much Ripple they can mint. He can mint whatever he wants. So you kind of want to have a fixed number of tokens for something, so that the market can kind of drive the price as opposed to just generating more of the same thing. It's kind of like the dollar. Yes?
I heard that they are gonna start basing, I think the US dollar on some cryptocurrencies like XRP and some other ones I don't know.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
They're gonna base the US dollar like I guess to like stabilize the price of the US dollar because it's like dropping the value. But they're gonna base it on some cryptocurrencies.
I've not heard that one. I think that would be hard for the government to do that. Kind of lose control of its currency if it was pegging the dollar to something other than the dollar. So maybe people are writing about that. Yes?
This is kind of off topic from Bitcoin, but like, what would you think the best like stocks like investing would be
You mean generally or around crypto?
generally?
I mean, it's not, I'm a little bit out of my expertise, but I mean, you can never go wrong with the big tech companies, I don't think, you know? Nvidia and those types of places, anyone who's building around AI is probably a good bet, but you definitely don't want to take investment advice from me. Yes?
Do you think if Ripple does go public, will XRP crash?
No, just the opposite. XRP will go up in value. So the reason is because Ripple, the company, will be worth a lot more money. So the token that represents that company will follow along. Yes?
How do you get into XRP? Is it just a thing you would buy and sell on Coinbase?
Yes. Anyone else? These are all good questions. Yes?
Which is the
I'm gonna start charging you guys, isn't it? Go ahead.
Which is the best Bitcoin cryptocurrency to invest in?
So people have a wide range of views about that. I think the ones that have made the most money, in my experience, have been those who kind of just bought and held steady on Bitcoin. It seems to be a proven appreciating asset class, and you just have to kind of hold your nose through the down cycle and not, think about selling. What happens a lot with these cryptocurrencies is that people get excited when the price starts going up, and they end up investing money that maybe they don't have or they're leveraging in order to invest, and then when the price goes down, they panic and then they don't, and they get wiped out. And the people who make the money are the ones who just been sitting there all along just holding. And so, if you're going to invest in this space, first speak to your parents. Second, don't sell, especially if you're buying the big three. I think that's it. I'm happy to, if you have any follow-up questions, just route them through folks here, and I'm happy to answer them. I just want to be clear that I'm not giving any investment advice because I don't give investment advice, but I can give you my opinions.
Awesome. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay, gentlemen, let me give you the drill for those of you who haven't been here before. The first thing we're gonna do is take a picture. Then we're gonna do attendance, and you guys are free to go. I have a plethora of cookies here that I would love to not bring home. So, step 1, picture. Step 2 is attendance. Step 3 is you guys can grab cookies and go. Guys, don't get it worse.
Yeah, it gets, here you go.
Nick? What's your son's name? Cash, come on in.
Yeah, you're doing good.
Get on the side of your dad. Guys, we're all gonna, for those of you in the aisle, you gotta come back in. Back in. We're gonna get everybody standing up. When you're ready, I'm ready. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna do the C with our right hand. We're not gonna cover our face. Right hand, not covering the face. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, guys, let's get Chris Sanders right here, okay? And lots of cookies. Come get your cookies.
Guys, that was great.
I don't try to.
And I'll let Nancy know. Somebody, I see a lunchbox. You may have forgotten a lunchbox.
Danny, you want a sugar cookie?
No, I'm okay.
I'm gonna add a couple cookies already.
Okay, it's fine. You're welcome. It's just. And
Good idea.
it's funny, every single quarter of their 5 years, and I had the same. Pretty easy recruitment. This was coming, so it would be really easy to have another kid as well. So, yeah.
What's the
Have fun. Take it. It's fine. It's just that.
No, but you're doing it to the select guys, you gotta be select. I mean, the school itself is select, I mean, they're here.
Really good.
Like, Ricky and
Shocking,
Vigil,
like shocking,
like when
yeah.
they're here, they're all solved up.
Good job with their cookies.
So that's it's a pretty good, I will say, you, I didn't even know that was. Well, I guess he's an 8th grader.
You want me to run down?
You got this?
Yeah, it was ready.
Oh, okay, he's right in front.
Yeah.
You want me to tell him this?
Yeah, can you tell him to wait for me?
If not, I'll take it.
I'm sure he'll get it.
You don't mind?
I'm-
Oh, I think we're gonna take it. Oh, okay, you got me, okay. I forgot to do time in pool.
That was about an hour.
About, yeah, almost
Yeah.
full time.
You have that good a turnout usually?
Oh, I normally have more.
Really?
Hey, Constantine, Rosie's going down. Yeah, she has a gift for you that she forgot to give
But
you.
I had, last year I had 18.
Oh, you're full?
And I had 2,800 through those 18
No, no, no,
sessions.
I was gonna say.
So I was averaging about
Uh,
170, 180 a session.
Yeah, she's meeting you out there,
But, you know,
walking
we
down.
can like
Alright,
create like,
Thanks
you
again.
could hear a pin drop, right? And we tried it, I brought in, you know, who's a
You good?
speaker, Dave, he had some plays baseball for
Renee Ruiz. He tells great stories, the kids are captivated. It all depends on the speaker and the topic. We have some that like you just bring back year after year after year because they can captivate the room, and then we take some risks with some of the other ones, but it seems to have paid off pretty good.
A lot of good
for the most
questions.
part. This one had a lot of questions. I think the issue with this one is, one, they're not used to it in December, but two, not everybody knows or is interested in Bitcoin. You could see those kids had interest, right? Some had owned part of it, you know, things like that. Their parents are probably dabbling in it. If it was investment banking or what they think is sexy, real estate or whatever they think, they really wanna go in these careers that they think are gonna get them rich quick. They just don't realize how much hard work is behind it. Just depends, but I think the sweet spot for the kids is between 30 and 40 minutes. Depending on the speaker, the questions come flying in after or during. If he's stopping during the speaking of the engagements, but I just try to cherry pick guys who speak teenage boy. And you and I both know that not everybody speaks teenage boy. So when they have somebody who they think speaks their language and can, you know,
I don't know, the reason I came, I don't know what Bitcoin is.
I found out a
I
little
got a
bit
crash
today.
course right now.
Yeah, I
You
got a
know-
crash
you know.
course.
I kept just like Googling what he was talking about to know
I
to go
take my
back to
full
the.
salary in crypto. If the school that,
You're kidding.
I'll take my full salary.
That's okay, while he was talking, I was opening up a Coinbase. I don't know, like, it's a little scary, cause you're like, oh, should I get on board, or, I don't know.
But I like what he said about being diversified, so.
You see that way he said that guy was a third, that's kinda.
Third is a
lot.
That is like extreme risk. Like they recommend like between 2 to 4%.
Yeah, but did you hear what he also said? He had a third in cash, so if he's sitting on that much cash doing nothing, a third on the.
Third in the S&P.
A third in the S&P
cryptos.
and a third in
Can
crypto.
you imagine a third of your net worth being wiped out in over a couple weeks?
No, but you
Whatever I did
also
with it, it was a price.
probably have it to lose and you're okay for it to rally.
Yeah.
He says one cash.
It's scary, because when you talk to your like investment guy, and you're talking about your retirement,
He said it like hands down, like, there's no question.
you ask like, should I change, should I diversify, and they're like, no,
It was
either they
cash.
can't give you that answer, or they'll say, well, you just have to be okay with it going up and down.
I want it.
I get so upset when I.
That's why it's
go
the
to
shadowing
church.
experience.
I took the
And that's
people
why
that
I, he said that my
that was the
relationship.
worst thing I could have done.
Oh my god.
Like, he's open.
Took it out a long time back. Training at $41 at the time. What's it training at? $12?
Around there, 12, 13, occasionally goes up to 15. The only thing that I
Nobody
made
has
my
to
money
do.
back with, well,
Whether they
wasn't my
pull the
money,
trigger or not.
but how I made money is I keep getting, yes, and I probably had
So the fact that
between
you knew, like,
10
did Joe Jackson, but Joe Jackson.
years.
Well,
Okay, so you're breaking even.
About,
But he took the whole thing?
For the freshman game.
For the JV.
We were talking about this the other day.
So.
That is crazy.
what happened was my husband
Around
and I
kids, I offered it,
and
one
we
kid
just
with
didn't want
Max
to have to pay
and
taxes.
Robbie.
So he said, take it.
Now, I mean, you have to sold.
No, it's just sitting there.
It's not bad.
It's
Not bad.
painful.
No, I took my cash. Cause that was a time where everything was going.
He's been in
Everything was
days
running.
with you.
Yeah.
But
Last 8 years.
it is what it is. At least the dividends will help you.
Tom was telling me there were like 8 to 10 minutes who took it in stock. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
She took the Camping World stock.
Camping World stock.
The Camping World
You took a
stock.
bath in it.
Not really, because I was telling you it pays dividends, so
Yeah,
I've
the dividends
probably
pretty
made
high.
between 8 and 10 in dividends so far, because we haven't touched it. But if I were to sell tomorrow, like I'd probably,
It's getting back, it's not gonna, but it's back to where it was,
we're just hoping
the average.
like it splits or something, you know?
Yeah, well, you need a reverse split.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Hi, guys. Okay, that's that. What else?
I forgot the keys and I came up those stairs and oh my god,
Oh, no.
that was no bueno. It was, I learned.
You should have just put Nick in the car with him to go to the locks.
You can't do it?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not getting that feeling from Cash that he's all in.
I didn't get the same feeling.
But the dad told me that money country is horrible.
That's what he said. Unless it's just a quiet kid. Max, if it's not.
No, there's no need to worry.
I'm gonna have you right now.
I took notes for.
Can you turn off
Oh, okay.
Max, I got you, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, miss.
All right, that's done. This is